If you were the US, what would you do right now? Is it a, hey, go spend a bunch of money in the infrastructure bill to set up mining operations? Do you make Bitcoin legal tender? Do you buy Bitcoin and put it in the balance sheet? Like, what would you do if Max Keiser is president and wants Bitcoin to be successful? What does Max Keiser do?
Well, I think I was the one who coined the phrase hash war maybe 2.5 years ago, that countries would get into competitive hashing. And because the idea is that governments are not going to ban Bitcoin. The smart governments are going to start hoarding and mining Bitcoin. So to the extent that the US becomes competitive, they would have to immediately start to underwrite mining, right? So, I mean, that's what you'd have to do right away. And that's the way to build a solid economy going forward. So I would start directing funds toward mining. And I would obviously look at a place like Texas, where the cost of energy is competitive globally, and build that out right away. He who has the Bitcoin makes the laws. And the countries that are really active in this the most are going to be extremely happy that they did. Those countries that lag behind are going to be, part of the new second world, right? We're reordering what constitutes a first world nation. The first world nation will be heavily into Bitcoin, and then the second and third world will be lagging in Bitcoin. So if the U.S. wants to be competitive, they need to immediately start directing resources in multiple ways to start to accumulate and mine Bitcoin.
My brothers have a couple of questions for you, but before I let them ask, one more for you is the difference between the federal government and the states. It seems like states seem to be taking the lead here. Is that a good thing? Should we encourage more states to do that? How do you see the difference between the two and how that plays out for Bitcoin?
Right. Well, the U.S. has an advantage over Europe in this regard, that the states have autonomy to a large degree, and they can push through laws and make big differences. And we saw that in the marijuana industry. The states got onto it first, and then it's heading up to the federal level. In Europe, though, it's generally more of an autocracy, top down from the EC, the European Commission, and there's very little room to maneuver. And Europe is in a really bad shape, Pomp. I mean, I see in Germany right now, the entire yield curve is negative. And many banks, almost all the banks now, are charging customers negative interest rates to hold their cash. Europe is in deep problems. But in the U.S., as you point out, you do have the states. The states can be are somewhat autonomous, and they can take the ball and run with it. And we're seeing it in Wyoming. In Miami, the mayor is pro Bitcoin, and that has a huge impact. So we can see. If Wyoming suddenly steals a lot of business from Delaware, where a lot of companies incorporate in Delaware, and they start grabbing that whole business, and you see a migration to Wyoming, that would have an impact. The Miami economy is set to do well based on the Bitcoin activity there. And Austin, Texas is becoming a huge Bitcoin hub. Texas is becoming huge. If the governor of Texas could really break away and say, we're going to start mining Bitcoin on the state level in a big way, and it's a big state. They're attracting congressional seats. They're pulling congressional seats away from California because so many people are leaving California, and they're becoming more of a political powerhouse. And if they go full on Bitcoin, that's going to be a huge difference. I mean, maybe that's where I would put my efforts, more strategically, is to get one big state fully onto Bitcoin instead of trying to get the federal government onto it. And that I think that's a good point. I think that's a good idea.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching that clip of the Best Business Show. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you know when we go live every weekday, and then head to SoFi.com/pomp so that you can get an account and we can get after it.